This episode of This Printed Thing is sponsored by PCBWay. Did you know that even if you don't have a 3D printer, you can still get your stuff 3D printed by PCBWay? They can also do injection molding, CNC machining, and they can even help you design and fabricate boards for your electronics. Use PCBWay for all of your prototyping needs. Prototype the smart way with PCBWay. Hey YouTube, welcome back to This Printed Thing. My name is Mike, and if you haven't already figured it out, I really like to 3D print things, which is why I happen to have an army of 3D printers here behind me. Something that I really love to find is when designers make games that can be 3D printed, because more fun than going to the store and buying a game is designing, or at least finding a design for a game that you can 3D print and customize the way you want. And I spend a lot of time on websites like Thangs and MakerWorld, and I happened to be on MakerWorld when I came across this design. We have here what looks to be an elegant design of a 3D printed bowling game. This particular design was made by Ozark Expeditions, and I went to this designer's page, and there are actually a lot of games that this person has designed. But this bowling game intrigued me, so I thought I would give it a try. Now, it does require some hardware other than things that you can 3D print, but it just so happens that I happen to have this hardware. Like, you need some 8mm steel balls and some 5x2mm round magnets. And I happen to have these from a previous project, so let's see if we can get one of these made. Now, I've opened the 3MF file for this project, and it looks like what we have is a base that goes under. Actually, this probably goes on top of this, because if I look under here, you have the markings for where you set the pins. We have the pins themselves, which have a hole in the bottom of them for the magnets, and there are corresponding holes here in this for the magnets. So this side would be the top side, and it looks like it goes onto this. Now, one thing I don't see here is a launcher. If you go back to the site here, you see that it has a launcher in some of these photos. So I dug through the comments, and it looks like the designer keeps the launcher on one of his other games. So I came here, and it looks like there are a few launch designs. There's one that looks like it just uses gravity. There's another one that, well, there are two others here. One is a spring-loaded launcher, looks like, and then there's another version of that. My guess, by looking at the 3MF files, this is the original spring-loaded launcher, and from reading some of the notes, it looks like it requires a few other parts that can't be 3D printed, whereas the second version looks like maybe it's more complete with 3D printed parts. I see that it has a spring-like mechanism here, whereas the original design did not have that. But to keep things simple, I'm gonna just try the gravity launcher, and if I feel that this doesn't have enough power, I'll go for one of the other designs. But first things first, let's get these pieces printed. Okay, again, you find me here in my front room of my house where I have this spacious coffee table, which is perfect for doing assemblies like these. If you hear any background noise, just know that I have both children and animals, an abundance of both. So it may be them. I'll do my best to just get things done without a whole lot of noise in the background. But here are all the pieces, and the creator shows how easy it is to put this together with the instructions included on the page where I downloaded this design. So let's get started. To begin, we've got our bowling lane surface here, and I opted to print it with two colors. We've got the Polymaker Polylite Brown with Bambu's own PLA Basic Black. And the magnets are optional for both the pins and the board here. Since I have these 5x2mm magnets, I'm going to go ahead and use them, but they will go in the bottom of the board and the bottom of the pins, so that when you set the pins down, they are magnetized to the board. And it just makes setting up the pins that much easier, I would assume. So let's try that. It's important to make sure that you have the orientation of these magnets correct. If your polarized sides are reversed, then you'll have problems setting up your pins. So I'm going to leave them in a stick like this, just to make sure that I've got things oriented correctly. But I should be able to just push them in like so. And these holes are done so that the magnets fit properly without any glue. And there we go. We have magnets in all the holes. I'm just going to give them all an extra push to make sure they're seated firmly. This one is a little more stubborn. So let's just take a pin and kind of push it down a little bit. There we go. There. So now we have just slight magnetism here on the top, and we'll want to make sure that we have them oriented correctly in our pins as well. So what I'm going to do is put a magnet over each of these dots so that we know they're oriented properly. So I've got them all positioned here, and I should be able to just push a pin over each magnet. Now this is my own trick. This isn't something that's explained in the instructions, but I figured this is the best way to make sure that we have these magnets done right. Okay, so we now have magnets in all of our pins, and if I put them on the board, you can see they stick, but at the same time, they're not so magnetized that when a ball comes through, it won't knock it off. So that's really what we want. This is, I think, going to be perfect. So next we're going to put our board, our surface, into our bowling lane here. And this was designed in such a way that you shouldn't need any glue. You've got these snaps here on the bottom of the board that when pushed in, they should click. So I'm going to test that right now. Click, 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 click. And there you go. And you can see I've gotten a little creative with the coloring here, decorating our bowling lane. So if we were to set these pins up, they just kind of pop into place, but again, not with so much force that they can't be knocked over by an incoming ball. There we go. Now really all we need to do is assemble our launcher. This has the same clicking mechanism that the bottom of our lane did. So I should be able to just push it in. Do the same thing here. This one's a little harder, but it still goes in. And then we have this onto which our bowling lane sits, and it's got kind of a rail on the bottom of it here. I'll try and show you without knocking off all my pins. So it'll just fit right into those grooves, and we got these notches here so you can position it at any distance you desire from our launcher. And then I think we're ready to play. So I have here an old marble machine that I made back when the only printer that I had was an Anycubic Viper. But I have it here because it uses these 8mm steel balls, which are what this design calls for. So I'm going to set our launcher right here and put a ball at the top. So I knocked one pin over, but I think that was a little too hard of a drop, so let's kind of back it off a little. Whoa! Okay, so let's go ahead and back our lane off a little bit on our rail. All right, well, we can see what fun can be had from this. I would call this a success. So how awesome is this? I will admit that my accuracy in knocking over these pins is a good depiction of my accuracy in knocking over pins on a real bowling alley. But I love this model. It's easy to print, easy to put together, and it's free on MakerWorld. I'll put a link in the description to this model and any of the other products that I've used to make this game possible. But that's it for this video. If you like content about 3D printing, be sure and mash that like button and hit subscribe. Also, I have models that I've designed available on Patreon. Our patrons on Patreon not only get access to my models, but also commercial license to sell physical prints of my models on the platform of their choosing. So we'll see you next time right here, and until then, go out, fire up those 3D printers, and make something awesome.